I think it's amazing that in 2014 we're still talking about what does meaningful youth engagement really look like. You know, I remember people would think if you have young people appearing in the audience, young people are engaged. If they're coming to lay out the chairs and serve the food, you know, young people were engaged, you know, and I think it just shows that we still have a long way to go. I'm just going to engage the audience for a little moment, and when we come back, I'd like to talk more about the decision making, you know, around how young people are getting involved in areas of decision making, particularly on issues of gender justice. So something to think about. One of the things that has come out, just engaging the audience now, has been the issue of mentorship, being around parents who have had ideologies around gender justice. And I was just curious, with just a show of hands, I promise I won't ask you to say anything more than that, how many of us had mentors or role models growing up and coaches, people that helped shape a lot of what we do right now? I actually expected a lot more hands.
I don't know how you are going to do it.
And you know what's surprising for me, though, is that you sort of expect that the older generations would have had more mentorship processes unfolding. The reason I'm asking this question, yesterday we had a whole dialogue on an intergenerational dialogue around social justice and gender justice issues. And a recurring theme was how young people and the older generation, or the advanced generation as we were advised yesterday, you know, we need to keep engaging. And I think what I took out of that session yesterday was that we need to have more engagements to understand where each of the generations is coming from. And I asked the issue around mentorship with the audience, because I think we're slowly moving into that space where opportunities for mentorship, for guiding young people are slowly dissipating. We're not finding that anymore. And hence bringing it back to you now around young people in the global space, young people negotiating ICPD, you know, post-2015, the Beijing Platform of Action. All of you are part of these processes. And what is your experience? So building on from the work that you do at an organizational level and being a young person in the global fora around issues of gender justice. I'll start with Nizi.
I just have a very practical example. And it was, so I now work for an organization called Women Deliver after having worked for GEICA for 3 years. And it was a very different process engaging in these spaces from the perspective of a youth-led organization versus now working on, we work on have specifically a youth program within Women Deliver that focuses on maternal reproductive sexual health and rights. So brokering those different high-level spaces from a youth-led perspective, and then from a non-youth-led organization that had sort of, for lack of better terms, kind of a bit more cachet and, a space within that high-level forum. And so we're kind of now, I'm finding myself in a position where we have, as an organization, are sort of an interlocutor between the youth that we work with, the young leaders that we work with to build their capacity, to make sure they have, the resources and skills to navigate these spaces, and, these high-level forum where there is a desire to include, I think a changing desire to include young people. I think it's not quite there yet, but it's a start. And so should not come as a surprise to everyone, but it's a bit easier to, as Women Deliver, within these spaces, say, we have some fantastic young leaders that we're working with. Can we find spaces for them to speak? Can they share their experiences? Can they, help to shape this global agenda? And we're finding a bit more receptivity. But it wasn't the same process as a youth-led organization. There was a lot of kind of trust issues. They were sort of like, you're this 25-year-old, who are you? Like, what skills do you have? You're not accredited. You don't have a nonprofit certification status. How do we know you're legitimate? And so the analysis of it is that there's still a lot of work to be done, I think, from the youth-led organization and movement space to make sure that those voices are legitimized from, and I don't say like legitimized from the high level, but that there is more support, I think, for really meaningfully including young people from the grassroots. They shouldn't need, this sort of intermediary like Women Deliver to find those spaces. It's better than nothing, but it's not great.
I think supporting youth leader organizations is the first step that we can do to transforming in a real path the engaging of young people in the development and in the transformation of their own life. In the UNFPA, we really believe in youth, supporting youth organization and real participation, and we are talking about 3 key points. The first one, we have to pave the way, trying to remove the obstacles to youth participation. The second one, we have to invest with real investment, not just of the international cooperation, trying to do governmental investments, empowering young people, and open spaces for real participation, because I really believe also in voluntary programs of volunteers, but can be a risk by the same time, Just bring to the young people the voluntary works without payment, without a real recognition of their work, of their proposals, of their decisions, where we have to empower and open real spaces for participation, and then the people that are supporting this youth organization, we need to go out of their work, of their way, Get out of the way, get out of the way, because all the time the coaching, it's important, but it's not forever, We can to follow up the grow up of the people, but in the perfect moment, we need get out the way and go out.
And Semi?
Well, I think in a way, I very much agree with what Lindsay and Jose have said. We've come a long way, but what we're saying is that there's still a lot more to be done. I had at the time what seemed and it was really a life-changing opportunity in 2002 to be one of 2 child delegates to the UN Special Session on Children. And I remember one of the main things that they kept saying was this was the first time children were going to the United Nations as delegates. And we're very excited about it, and it was all over the news and all of that. And when I look back since 2002, that is no longer the case. There are young people, there are children on different delegations going to their regional councils, the United Nations, civil society spaces, and all of that. So we're seeing that a lot of these spaces have expanded. What we are really saying is that it's not enough to just have that. You need to invest in capacity building, as you're saying, and supporting youth-led organizations. But I think the part that also gets really tricky is the part where they have to get out of the way. That is not very easy to do, because although we spend all this time building the capacity and enhancing the capacity of young people and youth-led organizations, we are still having a difficulty getting to the point where we fully trust them to be okay, or even seeing that it is okay for them to go and make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. And you find that in all different kinds of spaces, but also when it comes to young people's participation within these spaces. But really, what could go so wrong with allowing a young person or young people to just go and, do things from the experience that they have? What could be so wrong? So I think there's that part that we still need to get to. And I'm confident that we will get there. But we do not have the luxury of time, because we're not asking for young people's participation because it is nice to do. It's because it is an imperative. It is critical to ensuring that all the millions that we are investing in the HIV response, in women's empowerment, in post-2015, we're talking about sustainable development goals and all of that. It will not be sustainable, it will not be effective if we are not hitting the nail in the right places. And you can only get that if you're truly involving and consulting the people whose lives it matters most and depends on.
Thank you, Samuel. First of all, I would like to present before all of you different lenses of viewing young people, which are as follows. Economistic lens, as you know, that here we are seeing them as a consumer only. And youth across the countries of the world are playing a major role in increasing the economic growth, as you know. And the second one is the problem-solving lens. Youth are client for development interventions. They are problem. They have problem that we need to address. And first phrase I want to share with you. We should not see the drop that they give into the ocean. Rather than we should see the ocean in their drop. Thank you.
Okay. So now, drawing us back to the theme of the symposium around engaging men and boys for gender justice. One would ask, why is it important for young men to be worried about issues that have to do with women's health and empowerment? Why do young men care? Or where we're not talking to young men, why is it important then to engage young men and boys in issues around sexual reproductive health rights, particularly when we're looking at women's empowerment? Is it important for young men to be involved? And what are you all doing in different spaces? So if I start off with Lindsay, Women Deliver is so synonymous with, the issues around women's health and empowerment, issues around safe spaces for women, access, safe abortion, maternal health, and all of that. And why work with men and boys?
Thanks, that's a great question. I think that, just 2 sentences about the work that Women Deliver does with young people. Women Deliver has a conference every 3 years. We just held the conference in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia in 2013. And a component of that specific conference work, but now beyond the conference, is what we called our 100 Young Leaders program. And we actually have some young leaders here at the conference here, which is exciting. So the program was specifically designed to build the capacity and leadership skills of young people to come to the conference and participate meaningfully, but also it extended beyond the conference to include more capacity building and also small seed grants to run projects in country. So that's one thing we really heard from people is that, it's great to get all these skills. It's great to network and get media opportunities. I mean, it's obviously really meaningful when it's across the board, but when it comes to actually implementing projects in their communities, there was not the same access to funding. And I think sort of like Jose Roberto was saying, this assumption that young people are just sort of volunteering. It's very important, but, in the same way that, there are a lot of things that youth-led projects and initiatives are things that they're expected to do that you would never ask a non-youth-led organization to do for free. So the seed grant component really sort of opened the floodgates to see what some of our young leaders can do in their countries, and we actually gave out 10 seed grants in 2014, and 6 of them were to young men, which I was really surprised by because a lot of people think that we just work predominantly with young women. And several of those projects were focusing on early forced child marriage, in the sense that, I've been in a lot of spaces with women's organizations, women's rights organizations, feminists, talking about these issues. And, sexual violence is a good example where you can only, as an individual woman, take so many rape defense courses in a way that's going to influence whether or not you become that 1 in 3 statistic in your life. That's not the solution. It's obviously a component of the intervention, but it's not the solution. In the same way that you can only talk to girls so much about how they can avoid early forced child marriage without then talking to traditional leaders, talking to male heads of household, talking to brothers, and talking to men in the communities. And so one of the really fantastic things that we found in this work with the seed grants is that there's also a very important, obviously because Women Deliver does advocacy, a really strong advocacy component, that it's not just about individual behavior change. It's also about how can we change laws and policies. And one of our young leaders in particular, Yemerai from Zimbabwe, has just been working, had really fantastic project and has partnered with Girls Not Brides and UNFPA Zimbabwe. So it just he's really crystallized how, it's about sort of making sure that we're changing at the policy level, but also ensuring that girls are able to live their lives free from violence and forced marriage. And it's really taken a particular, that particular view as a young man and the power and privilege that he has as a young man to construct a project that's really meaningful. So, yeah.
What have been some of the results of that? I know it's a very short term in between the grant being awarded and the work that he's done, but are you seeing more young men coming on board, more younger women coming on as well, finding those spaces to be a space for both of them to engage in?
No, I would definitely say that within the youth leadership space, specifically for sexual reproductive health and rights, there is space for both men and women because it does take everyone. It's sort of a partnership. And you talk about things like preventing unplanned pregnancy, access to family planning. It literally takes a man and a woman to have a baby. So to prevent unplanned pregnancies, you sort of need to, this is comprehensive sexuality education as well. It can be gender transformative. So yes, to answer your question, yes, we're literally actually supposed to be getting the final reports from the seed grants when I go back to my desk on Monday. So I'll be able to get more of a sense of exactly how impactful their projects have been. But what we've seen so far is really fantastic.
Okay. And then, Semi, one of the things you spoke about was your personal journey into the work that you do, but you continue to do this work as a young man, especially around karma. When you think of maternal mortality or any issues around maternal health, it's usually a space that we see occupied by more women, given that, it's our own protest, right? It's something that we see, something we experience, something that we live. Why do you think engaging men in a discourse such as maternal mortality, is important? And what strides are you starting to see or have you made in this work?
Well, so in many ways, I think the place we are trying to get to is where we should have been from the beginning. And we are not there because of many reasons that I could go on and on about, but mostly related to how society is being structured, socialization, and all of that. So if we were at where we had to be in the beginning, where men and women are treated equally and have the same privileges and rights and had access to the same things, then we would not even be having this discussion of should we involve men or should we not, because that would already be happening. But I look really at this issue from two main perspectives. One is, well, I'm not the best person with colors, but you could say this is yellow. Or some people might think it's
yellow?
Brown or something. But that's not the point. My color perception is not the issue on board here. The issue is we decide to say this is yellow and this is brown and the seat in which you are is red. If growing up you had been told that that has to be called blue, that's what you would have called it. And it's a very clear way to see that all these things that we have in our minds and these attitudes and these systems, structured and sometimes non-structured discrimination and denying of people's rights are not things we are born with. They're things we come up to learn. So coming from an African country and someone who grew up on a farm, I should maybe use a few farming examples. I believe, and I'm one of those people who believe that it is easier to bend a tree when it is young. When you're growing it. That is the golden opportunity. So we need to take advantage of the new cohort of boys and girls who are growing up to help shape a new reality. That reality that we are trying to get in the end, I think our opportunity to introduce it to those who are coming now, so that they grow up in a world where they do not grow up with the same biases that unfortunately our generation and the ones ahead of us have grown up with. But that doesn't mean that we can really sit for 30 or 40 years to wait for these ones to grow up. We still need to do something with those who have already grown up in a system that has for so long denied women very basic rights. And that includes pruning then those already matured trees. So I think we need to look at it at those two perspectives. How do we ensure that we tap into the opportunity of those who are bringing up through education? Attitudes are changing automatically, but we need to really focus on looking at how we can tap into that group and make a change, and also bring into scale the interventions like what Men Engage and the gender justice movement is really working on now to help change attitudes of individuals and of communities. And I think that is extremely important. Now, when you come to an issue like that of maternal mortality, it is really high in many parts of the developing world. And when we looked at it in Ghana, for instance, we talk about the 3 delays. The 3 delays, one being having the knowledge to determine, for instance, when a pregnant woman needs urgent medical attention. There are all kinds of beliefs and practices that put women at risk. For instance, when a pregnant woman's feet are swollen, in my community, it's interpreted as, oh, she's going to have a bouncy baby boy. That is the sign right there. But that means that she needs to go to the hospital. She needs, medical attention. So how do we help in sensitizing people to remove that first delay, where there are all these kinds of, oh, a pregnant woman does not eat this, she does not do that. And these are actually things that she probably needs to be healthy as a woman who's carrying a pregnancy. And there's a second delay where we have the UN recommendation that for every 500,000 people, you need 1 comprehensive and 4 basic emergency obstetric facilities. And in many of our countries and in many places, you have 1 hospital serving a very, very big area, poor infrastructure. So you'd have a situation where a woman is being carried on the back of another person to run for 10 kilometers to get to a hospital because she's in labor. Now, if we have systems like that, it means that we are setting up for high maternal mortality rates because if the woman is bleeding, for instance, she would have bled out by the time she gets to the health facility. So that's the second delay in making sure that people have access to healthcare facilities. Then you have the third part, where they get to the health facility, and because there's that 1 hospital serving everybody, there is a car accident, there are people with all kinds of emergencies. So although the woman is in labor and needs immediate attention, she has to wait for 2 hours at the health facility because there's 1 doctor and maybe 2 nurses and 500 patients. So there are things that we need to do as individuals, and that's where we come in as young people and trying to galvanize support within the communities so that the taxi driver in that rural community understands that it is not an abomination for him to carry a woman who is in labor in his taxi because she will break water in the car and he's doomed for 1 year. He needs sensitization. And we young people are more educated, and we come across this, and we think this is something we can do that doesn't really cost money. So there is a role that we can play in ensuring that we reduce this. But also, if you look at the statistics, you would know that there are many young women, even below 20, who are pregnant. Some of them because they want to, most of them because it wasn't planned, and this is where the issue of sexual and reproductive health and rights comes in. But we cannot sit aside and be apathetic as young people. We really have a clear role to play, and that role is gender neutral. It doesn't matter whether you are male or female or whatever. You need everybody's hand on deck to make sure that we are able to make a change and ensure that no woman dies whilst giving life.
I think we get the concept of why engaging men and boys is critical, and a lot of the times it's easier to almost say it out that we need to have men coming on board. But do we find it that perhaps people don't know what that looks like? What does it really mean to engage men and boys? At which point do they come in? How do you design programs that show exactly the how-to part? I think sometimes we take it for granted that by saying, it has to be gender neutral. What does that really mean? When you're looking at issues around the maternal space, the pregnancy space, and you put into it cultural beliefs. What does it mean to say we need men on board around supporting their partners during pregnancy? How does that exactly look like? I know I'm bringing into the whole conversation issues around culture, but I think it's also important for all of us to lay out how we're involving men and boys in the different elements. Lindsay spoke about a young man being involved in policy advocacy, which I found very critical because largely we still find that men are making the decisions around policy, right? And then how do you involve a lot of these males or men within the policy structure? What are the activities that, I think sometimes we know what we mean, but does the next person really understand what it is that they could go out and do in engaging men? So, Jose, with the Men Engage Guatemala, what activities are you currently involved with that seek to engage men and boys in the different topics that you deal with?
Yeah, I think the men and boys are waiting for spaces to participate in gender justice issues. They are thinking different right now with our intervention or without our intervention, because they are not feeling comfortable with the hegemonic and patriarchal gender norms. They are living the cost in the early ages. They are looking for a different life. In my own experience, they are looking for healing too. When we are working the workshops, even if it's a workshop on sexuality, the own experience about fatherhood or the experience with their parents are not too easy. In many cases, violence is into their relationships or those relationships, and they are looking for to transforming this story, their own story and their reality. We are working, engaging at rural communities to men and boys as allies of the adolescent girl programs, and they are getting involved. They are not specialized programs for boys, but they are looking spaces, they are thinking different, they are looking to be part of the social transformation. It's not too easy in the first time, but if you are working with them in different issues in a comprehensive way, in programs, with participation, trying to do advocacy process, to do reflections, to do groups, analyze, and involving them using different plays and very comfortable methodologies to work with them, they are getting involved. And they are thinking very, very critical about their realities, and they are looking at different stories than their parents or mothers.
Zishan, what are some of the activities within the youth structure you lead that you are currently implementing that focus on engaging young men and boys?
Okay. I will present you some example of youth engaging in different type of activities and initiatives which directly relate to gender justice, discrimination, and other social issues. And if you see, if we take a look at the last few years, then we will realize that youth have played a major role in the changes which have occurred in my part of the world. And I would also like to say that most of the people taking part in volunteering activities are youth who are aged between 10 to 25 years. And I also have been a part of many social change initiatives where young people have played a pivotal role with great perfection and equally participated in many social change movements. I would like to present few examples from the initiative which I ran and I am part of. One, as Itmaling said, that I'm running my own campaign named Safe Safar. Safe means Surakshit Hindi ka, and Safar is from Urdu word means yatra, traveling. So, which works to create a safer environment for women and girls traveling in public transportation. We work with young auto rickshaw driver to sensitize them towards gender values. And the specialty of this campaign is that its principal stakeholder is largely men. And auto rickshaw driver and young people we work with. And I would like to dive little deep into the part. Couple of pointers might help us to see it better. And I think this campaign, this is the first time in UP Uttar Pradesh where I belong to, some collective spaces is given to men to be able to engage with the issues of gender-based violence. Till that, mostly he is only assigned to the role of an accused and had hardly any chance to speak back. And so first of all, this is giving them a space to engage positively with the issue of gender-based violence. And in case of auto rickshaw drivers, working on a gender safety campaign is giving them a dignity in the community, also help them having a good business. And the second campaign I'm part of Must Bowl. Must Bowl. Bowl is a Hindi word that is speak. And I think most of you know about this campaign. It is a youth-led campaign against gender-based violence in India, uses social media for social change. And the campaign enables young people to create and use digital stories to advocate against violence as peer facilitator and leaders. And apart from this, I lead a fellowship program with the name of Change Loomers, where we search those youth who are working on social change project. We focus on inclusion and gender justice. And here I can clearly feel that boys are actually working on those social issues which are very important for bringing long-lasting change. And they are coming with their initiatives based on domestic violence, street sexual harassment, SRH issues. And I have one example that one boy named Neeraj, and his project idea triggered from his own experience of seeing women in his family being discriminated during menstruation. And he also admitted being insensitive towards it and making fun of it with friends in the past. And he has deeply reflected on the problems women are facing during menstruation and planned to address them through his initiative.